what I want to do now is I want to share with you some of the experiences which we had. I like sharing stories, and I want to share with you today 3 mistakes which some HR leaders tend to make during layoffs. Okay, and these are the 3 things which I wanted to share with you, because it's quite fascinating that when I talk about such things, people say that, you mean you don't know, man? So I want to share with you. The first thing is some HR leaders tend to make is that they think they lack the authority. One of the interesting things that happened at the 2019 event itself, when we launched the first book, was, I still remember, Rachel was giving a talk. Rachel was sharing her own point of view, and she said about how HR leaders have to stand up to the business leaders, okay, and to assert themselves. And one young lady, HR, stood up and said, "Can me? Can me?" It's like, oh, seriously, you can HR? So that is one of the things I want to share with you, is that as HR practitioners, you have the power. We consulted on a case where 40 individuals were retrenched. HR unfortunately took a backseat because they had senior folks there, but they didn't push themselves forward. And what then happened was, you know who took the charge for the whole retrenchment exercise? The CFO. Wow, I see everyone's going like, okay. Suddenly everything became how much? How much? Can we cut costs? Can we not pay off the commissions? Can we not pay out this? Can we not give them this? Can we do this? Suddenly it became very clinical. Suddenly it became a financial project. And needless to say, it had a lot of negative repercussions about it. HR needs to realize that they have a seat at the table and they should push forward. And later on during our sharing session, you can ask the leaders here how they manage to influence, okay, the whole process. But the question is, what then can you influence? So there are 3 things that we can influence. One of the things we always believe in, and what the unions especially believe in, is that retrenchment shouldn't be your first choice. You should have redeployment, retraining. What are the other options that we can do? Retrenchments should not be the first tool that you reach out for. And it's very tempting with regards to the CEO saying, okay, let's cut headcount now, you see. But you need to push back. So redeployment is one. Retraining especially is another. Retool, reskill your people. WSDA, Ganesh has been telling me that they have a lot of programs for reskilling, retooling, and a lot of it are sponsored large part by the government itself. So you have to play a role of pushing back. Okay, sometimes doing the right thing is not easy. Okay, and doing the easy thing is not always right. So you need to be able to push back. So push back on what? On the processes. You can push back on the timing as well. For instance, we had a client who was planning a retrenchment 1 week before Chinese New Year. Ouch. And it was sad because it was all planned from the US side. And luckily, the HR director pushed back and said, no, you cannot do it. I refuse to do it if you want to make it before Chinese New Year. Okay? So that's a good example of how you can manage it. And so the when is important, but how do you push back? I think one of the ways to push back and influence well is to be the subject matter expert, to be the authority on it. And that's why we have books, we have the new editions, we have training sessions that we conduct for HR to understand what the proper retrenchment practices are. And of course, bring in consultants. We consulted on a project last year. A pretty big organization wanted to let go of 400 people. Okay? And we were not there to do the outplacement. We were just there to do the consulting work. And the conclusion which we pushed to them was basically, you don't need to retrench people, right? Redeploy. There's a framework which we were sharing with them. Okay, how to divide your people into 4 groups. The good for now, good for later. No good for now, not so good for later. What do you do with the 4 groups of people? So we have frameworks we can help you with. So we were quite happy that they did not retrench those 400. Now, when should you come in the process? Right from the start, I say right from the start. Okay, right from the start, early on, because if you're coming too late, someone's gonna want to take over, and God help you if it's the CFO. Okay, tough. That is the problem which HR leaders manage when they manage this process is they actually underestimate the amount of effort and time needed for this. We were helping out a client who did a 20% exit. Just 20 people, which is quite large, but we've handled 400 people exits before. A 20% exit took them close to 3 months to plan. And even then, they found that they did not have enough time. We had another client who was exiting 300 folks, and it took 9 months to plan. And even then, they were also once again rushing. So do not underestimate the timing and the effort needed when it comes to planning. And you can ask the HR leaders later, okay, how extensive it is. Why? Because it's a nightmare process if you think about it. The logistics of planning on the same day, how many people, how your packages are going to look like, and sometimes all right the way to the end, the night before, because a good HR team up to the night before, they're still deciding who can we redeploy, can we not retrench this person, right? All the way to the night before, and then they say, oh, we cannot, so we need to recalculate all the documents and everything, reprint up. So it's massive. And worse is if you have if it's a scale issue, you've got multiple sites, different countries, each country has different regulations, then it gets very, very complicated. So have a lot of time, spend a lot of thinking about it. We had this client who had a factory all the way in Tuas area, and they retrenched 180 staff. What happened was that half of the staff were from JB as well. And they retrenched, the whole day they retrenched. So they needed to get security. They were worried that security issue might pop up. They had to organize, they actually got medics there in case someone passed out. They organized buses to bring the staff home, right? And all this under the shroud of secrecy. Because it's confidential, right? You can't do it. So how do you plan out? There's so many moving parts involved. So the logistics is painful. And the thing that some HR leaders and business leaders tend to forget are the other hidden processes involved. For instance, PR. It's not just about managing the messaging to the people outside the press who might be interested and say, hey, I heard you got retrenchment. So we actually do media training for the staff as well, for the business leaders. And it's not just the media that you have to address. Your partners, your customers, your clients, they are suddenly reading, this my partner company retrenching, what's happening? And if you don't talk to these people, if there's no messaging to these people, that's why we call it the other hidden processes. If you don't message these people properly, they think, oh no, the company shut down. But it's not true. So you got to worry about that. And the area which we often forget as we focus on how to give the best care for the exiting staff, how do we give the best information to the unions, the press, the partners, it's the most important element. It's the people who are staying behind. How are you going to message to them? And that's why the third thing which we tend to see that people forget is they tend to neglect the stayers. Okay? Because I can tell you for a fact, on retrenchment day itself, if it's a massive retrenchment, your productivity for the whole week is down the drain. No one's going to be in any mood to work, especially if it's sudden. We had this case where the whole thing ground to a halt because they're saying like, and the worst thing was the messaging was not clear. The messaging, the CEO said that this is just the first round. We don't know when and how many more are coming. Suddenly nobody wants to work anymore. It's like, I finished the project for what? I got this client. You have to prepare for productivity collapsing on the first day. So you got to plan for that as well. But what is really sad is that when you have a situation where the people you want to keep, you retrench, unfortunately, a group of people, but the talent you want to keep at ring fence, suddenly they are seeing like, hey, what am I next? And what's the first thing they will do? They start looking out for a job already. You will literally experience a talent flight of the people that you want to keep. And that is counter to what's happening. So you have to address that in terms of messaging. And besides the productivity drop, one of the things we noticed was the stayers, sometimes when you exit the staff. They're not an immediate exit. They need to close up their staff. They need to close up. There's a handing over period, maybe 1 week, maybe 2 weeks, maybe even 3 months. And these people will have to continue working with the people who are already staying. It becomes very uncomfortable, okay? Because suddenly it's like, and this is a true case. We had a client, we met a manager in a company for 15 years. And his colleague in a company for 20 years got a package. And then they had to work together in the pantry. And he said to me, the manager who was staying behind asked me, Adrian, do I say I'm sorry for what happened or do I congratulate him? 20 years, no cap. Do I congratulate? Very uncomfortable, very awkward. Okay, so it became fractious to the point where once again productivity drugs. And as much as people talk about survival guilt, those people who, why wasn't I retrenched? My friends were retrenched. There's such a thing as survival envy. Why I want to get the package, I didn't get the package. And then they start getting jealous. And then they start getting upset. And then they start pushing. So you have situations of like this where you forget the stayers and you need to look after them. And for us, we strongly recommend that you must have a continuation plan. I mean, we help clients with that to the point where if you look after the stayers, I mean, you have to look after those who are leaving. But if you look after the stayers, we had this case where a young 28-year-old guy, after we conducted the training for the stayers, how to get them back up again. Because the sooner the stayers can get their footing, the sooner the business goes back to normal. Okay? This guy, 28 years old, I remember, a technology guy. He, after the training sessions that we did for the stayers, he came up to me and he said, Adrian, I'm 28 now. I've been retrenched 3 times. But this is the only company where they actually bothered to look after the people who are staying behind, and they show that they care. Maybe I'll stick around longer for this one, he said. Okay? So he wasn't retrenched, but what the company does for this. So there are a lot of moving parts, and I'm not going to talk too much more about this because a lot of it's in the book. So version 1, version 2, and if you're asking why version 2 is bigger, it's because there's a lot more content, but I told Yan my eyesight very bad, so the font bigger. Very inclusive. One size bigger, okay, so everyone says, thank you, Adrian, thank you, Yan. So it's not rocket science, and I think because it's not being taught in schools or business school, one of the best ways is to pull a senior and ask a senior, or just come talk to us. Okay, we're always happy to provide information because we believe that knowledge is power, and as HR leaders, we have to be very proactive in this whole process. Okay, and thank you very much. That's all we had to share. Yen, back to you.
To get your free copy of the Responsible Retrenchment Handbook, just scan this QR code to download it. Thank you for watching our video.